Alright, so for decimals to fractions, you need to remember your place values of your fraction. So for example, we have 0 and 6/100ths. Okay, I know a lot of you like to read your decimals as 0.06. Okay, that is the faster way to do it, but if you read it the proper way, the mathematic way, you do need to remember that it is 0 and 6/100ths, because this first number, the first number after the decimal is the 10th place. Then the next number is the 100th place. This should be reviewed to you. Okay, 10th to 100th. I'm sorry that I wrote over the decimals to fractions, but that is your 10th place and this is your 100th place. Okay, so for turning a decimal into a fraction, all you need to do is put the number over the last decimal place value and then simplify. Okay, so for example, for 0 and 6/100ths, so saying hundredth, that's already give you a hint of what the fraction is going to be. So if it's 0 and 6/100ths, it's going to be 6 over, you guessed it, 100. But that can be simplified into 3 over 50, so 3/50ths. Okay, and remember, you have to simplify, okay, in order for you to, because this is technically correct. 6 over 100 or 6/100ths is correct, but you do need to simplify it. Okay, so what about this one? We have 0 and 8/10ths. Okay, that's our 10th place. It's the first number after the decimal is the 10th place. So it's going to be 8 over 10, which of course can be simplified into 4/5. Okay, and remember, when you're simplifying numbers, you're just finding the greatest common factor and dividing those the number in the greatest common factor between the numerator and the denominator, and that's how you get your simplified fraction. So for 8/10ths, this the greatest common factor between them is 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and that's how I got 4/5. For 6 and 100ths, I divided, the greatest common factor again was 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Okay, so what about this one? So I'll show you. So 1 should say the 10th place, 2 is our 100th place, and this is 5 is our 1000th place. Okay, so this is 0 and 125 thousandths. So that should give you a hint of what the fraction is going to be. So try this on your own. Try to see if you can find the correct converted fraction from this decimal. So pause the video, do it on your own, and then restart the video again to check your answer. Okay, so 0 and 125,000. So the 5 is the thousandths place. Okay, so that means that 0 and 125 thousandths, you're going to have 125 over 1,000. Okay, and which will be simplified by 1/8. Okay, so remember, when you're working with decimals to fractions, you're just going to put the number over the last decimal place value and then simplify. So this one's also pretty easy too. As long as you know your decimal place values, it should not be difficult for you to turn the decimal into a fraction and then simplify. All right, so for fractions to decimals, okay, so this is going to sound very familiar to you. It's the same thing as turning fractions into a percent. So if you notice when we were doing fractions to percent, it was a decimal first. Then we turned it into a percent. So we kind of technically already went over how to turn a fraction into a percent. So for this one, all you need to do is divide the numerator by the denominator. Okay, and this definitely should be reviewed too, because I believe you go over this in 5th grade of how to turn a decimal to a fraction, how a fraction turns into a decimal. But we're doing a quick review now so you can see it and you can just kind of get a review on it. Okay, so for example, we have 7/8, so we have to divide the numerator, which is our 8, and then by the denominator, which is 7. So 8 divided by 7, which is 8 into 7. Now 8 can't go into 7, so we know it's going to be a decimal. So we need to put our decimal here because we know it can't go into 7. So we don't put it here, we put it after the number. Then we have to put a 0. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. 70 minus 64 is 6. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 60. 7 times. 8 times 7 is 56. 60 minus 56 is 4. Bring down another 0. So remember, there are zeros here because we had to put a decimal here. So you need to just add as many zeros as possible in order before you until it is fully divisible. So you just keep adding zeros until you I forgot how to word it properly, but you just keep adding zeros after your dividend, so that once you put in until you can fully divide it, and then you end up with 0 remainder. There you go. So I added another 0 there, and 8 goes into 40 5 times. 8 times 5 is 40, so we have fully divided it with no remainder. So now we are left with our decimal, which is 0 and 875 thousandths. Okay, because it's in the thousandths place. So this is 0 and 875 thousandths. Okay, 1/4. Okay, so for some of you, you should have already remembered what 1/4 is. That's something that is one of those fractions and decimals to remember, which we will go over later on in the next video. Okay, so 1/4. So if you want to see how it is 1/4, we just divide the numerator and the denominator. 4 goes into 1. 4 can't go into 1, so we need to put our decimal, add our 0. 4 goes into 10. 2 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down a 0. 4 goes into 20. 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So it is fully divided. So we have 1/4, which equals out to 0 and 25 hundredths. Okay. Now try doing 4/5 on your own. See if you can do this on your own. Pause this video right now, do it on your own, and then check your answer by restarting the video again. Okay, so 4/5. Should have done it on your own already. 5 goes into 4. Can't do that, so you gotta know it's going to be a decimal automatically. Add the 0. 5 into 40 is 8. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. And it's fully divided, so we are left with 0 and 8/10. Okay, so fractions to decimal, you just have to divide the numerator by the denominator. Remember, it's not the denominator by the numerator, because I noticed that some of you would do, oh, it's supposed to, for 7/8, you would put how many times does 7 go into 8. No, it's how many times does 8 go into 7, because remember, something to remember, a fraction bar shows you, a fraction bar is the same thing as division. Okay, if you even look at a division sign, and I've showed some of you this, if you look at a division sign, this is the fraction bar, these 2 dots are the numbers. So it is whatever whenever you look at a fraction, it is always the numerator by the denominator. So it is 8 oh, wait, I wrote this wrong. I just realized it is not 8 divided by 7 because that's when you put 7 into 8. It is, so cross this out. Sorry, made a mistake. 7 divided by 8. The numerator divided by the denominator. The numerator here is 7. The denominator here is 8. This is 1 divided by 4. And this is 4 divided by 5. See, so don't make the same mistake I did. Although I did do it correctly here, I wrote it incorrectly here. It's 7 divided by 8 because it's the numerator divided by the denominator. Okay, so that's how you turn a fraction into a decimal.